All right, let's talk about one of history's greatest mysteries, the ancient Maya. You've got this civilization with these absolutely stunning cities, mind-blowing mathematics, and a worldview so complex it's staggering, all thriving for centuries in the jungles of Mesoamerica.
And then, poof, their biggest, most powerful centers are just empty. Their incredible story, carved into stone monuments, goes silent. So to understand why, we've basically got to become detectives. We have to follow the clues they left behind, crack their code, and uncover the very fragile foundation their whole world was built on.
So, where do we even begin? Well, first things first, we have to figure out how to read their story. And that's a huge deal, because for hundreds of years, the beautiful, intricate Maya script was a complete mystery.
Now you've got to understand, cracking this code wasn't some lone genius having a eureka moment. No way. It was more like a centuries-long relay race of brainpower. It all started with a Spanish bishop's very flawed notes back in the 1500s. Then a German librarian figured out their insane calendar system. And then boom, the 20th century hits and a few brilliant minds finally started to piece it all together.
Okay, so here's the big mistake that messed everyone up for so long. Way back in the 1560s, a bishop named Diego de Landa asks his Maya informant to write down an alphabet. So he says the Spanish letter B. The Maya scribe, trying to be helpful, draws the glyph for the sound be. See the problem? Landa thought he had a one-to-one alphabet, but what he really had was a list of syllables. And this one simple mix-up, it sent scholars on a wild goose chase for 300 years. Just incredible.
The real breakthrough moment came from a Soviet linguist, Yuri Knorosov, in the 1950s. At the time, the top guy in the field was totally convinced the glyphs were just symbolic ideas. But Knorosov, he had a hunch. He's looking at an old Maya book and he sees a drawing of a turkey. Next to it are two glyphs. He knows from Landa's old flawed list that one glyph is the sound ku. So he thinks, the Maya word for turkey is kuts. Could that second glyph be two? He tried it out on other carvings and it worked. That was it. That was the key that unlocked everything.
So it turns out the Maya weren't using an alphabet at all. They had something way more clever and flexible, a logosyllabic system. What does that mean? Well, they could use a single picture-like sign for a whole word, that's a logogram, or they could spell the word out phonetically using signs for syllables. They could even mix and match them. It's so elegant, so complex, and suddenly it was readable.
But the story gets even better. The next huge leap forward came from an amazing woman named Tatiana Proskouriakoff. She was looking at all these stone monuments and noticed something strange. The dates carved on them all fell within a normal human lifespan. And she has this incredible insight. What if these aren't about gods and planets? What if they're about people, real kings and queens? She was right. And all of a sudden, these carvings weren't just myths. They were history books, telling the stories of real lives, real dynasties, real wars.
All right, so now that we can actually read what the Maya wrote, a profound truth about their culture just jumps off the page. One thing, above all else, was at the absolute center of their universe: corn. Their whole civilization was, quite literally, built on it.
Just think about this number for a second. 9,000 years. That's how long the people in this part of the world have been cultivating maize. It's this one single plant that allowed them to stop wandering and start building permanent settlements. It's the reason those incredible cities could even exist in the first place.
And we're not just talking about dinner here. It goes so much deeper. In their most sacred creation story, the Popolva, the gods try to create humans from mud, but they just fall apart. They try wood, but they're empty and lifeless. It's only when they use corn dough that they succeed. For the Maya, they were, fundamentally, people made from corn.
It was everything. It was their food, sure, but it was also their economy, their religion. Even their calendar was tied to the cycle of planting and harvesting maize. It was the absolute bedrock of their society. And, being that dependent on one single thing, well, that brings us right to the heart of our final mystery.
So here's the big question. If they were such master farmers, why did their most powerful cities suddenly fail? The answer, as it turns out, isn't in the soil, it's in the sky. And what happened when the rain just stopped falling? And this is where things get really weird. It's a total paradox. I mean, you'd think the biggest, most important cities would be built right next to a big river, right? Common sense. But not the Maya. Their megacities, places like Tikal and Calakmul, were built in an area with fantastic soil, yeah, but no rivers, no lakes, and to top it off, they had a brutal 4-month dry season every single year. How on earth did they pull that off?
Just look at where these powerhouses were. Tikal, Calakmul, Karakal, these are the heavyweights, the New York and London of the classic Maya world. And they're all stuck in this really tough environment, totally landlocked, and completely at the mercy of the seasonal rain.
And get this, to make it even crazier, these huge cities actually got less annual rainfall than a lot of the smaller towns that were sitting pretty next to rivers. It defies all logic. Why would the most powerful kings on Earth choose to set up shop in the most water-stressed places imaginable? There has to be a reason.
And here's the twist. The challenge was the point. That very lack of water was the source of the king's power. See, being a Maya king wasn't just about winning wars. It was about being a master plumber, a water manager. These kings organized the massive labor needed to build these gigantic city center reservoirs to store rainwater. Their political authority, their very right to rule, came from one simple promise: I will give you water when the sky won't.
It was like a deal, a powerful social contract. The people paid tribute to the king, corn, goods, and their labor. In return, the king managed the reservoirs that got them all through that long, dry season. And, just as importantly, he performed the sacred rituals meant to appease the gods and make sure the rains came back. His power was a performance, and the biggest show on Earth was making it rain.
But you can see the problem here, right? A system that powerful is also incredibly fragile. It's all built on a promise. So what happens when that promise gets broken? What happens when the king performs his rituals and the rains just don't come?
Well, that's exactly what happened. Climate scientists can read the history of rainfall from sediment in lake beds and formations in caves, and the data tells a terrifying story. Around 750 CE, things started getting a lot drier. And then, for about 100 years, starting around 850, a series of absolutely brutal, multi-year droughts hammered the Maya heartland. Their entire system was about to face a stress test like nothing it had ever seen before.
And when you look at who survived and who didn't, the pattern is just undeniable. Those huge regional centers, the ones totally dependent on rain-fed reservoirs, they were abruptly abandoned, just emptied out. The smaller centers with some river access, they had mixed results. But the towns located right on major rivers with high rainfall, they were largely fine. The pattern is crystal clear.
When those droughts kept coming year after year after year, the king's promise was shattered. His rituals were revealed to be powerless. The reservoirs, those great symbols of his authority, dried up and turned to cracked mud. The very foundation of his rule evaporated. And so, the people voted with their feet. They walked away from the cities and the failed kings.
And this right here is the most important takeaway of all. The Maya people did not vanish. They didn't just disappear into the jungle. What collapsed was a specific political system in a specific region. The people themselves, they adapted. They moved on, they migrated to areas with more stable water, and they reorganized their societies. Their civilization wasn't erased, it transformed. It's an incredible story from over 1,000 years ago, written in stone and water. But it leaves us with a really powerful question, one that feels more relevant than ever. It forces us to think about that delicate, fragile link between our environment, the critical resources we all depend on, and the stability of the societies we build.